All right. Hi, folks. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to wait a few, maybe a minute or two, and let folks in, and then we'll go ahead and start. All right, let's go. Very good. So if you're just joining, there's probably going to maybe 30 more seconds, and then we will start. All right. Well, I think it's 9:02 Pacific time, so I think we should go ahead and start. So welcome to this online meetup. And the title is 3 workflow automation examples in 25 minutes. So I need to make sure that I'm going to stay under the 25, maybe a few minutes over, but definitely no more than 30. And we'll cover how to handle errors, how to do custom API actions, and how to delete users. So before we do that, this is the agenda. I call this a no slides meetup. I just have this, I don't really count these as slides. But hello and welcome. That's what we're doing now. So my name is Max Gatt, and I lead community for workflows. I am based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I always like to ask where people are joining from. So if you want to type what city, country, state you're joining from, or any other information, I think that's always interesting to see where folks are joining from. So that's the hello and welcome part. Again, then we're going to spend most of the time on building the 3 examples, and then at the end, then we should have some time for questions and resources. So I see some people from Norway, Spain, very nice. St. Louis, very good. Well, welcome everyone. Oslo, okay, very cool. Good. Again, I'm in the Bay Area, so that's why I'm based. Spain. Oh, we have a lot of folks from Spain today. So welcome. Okay, so this is the agenda, and again, we'll spend the 3 examples are I'm going to show you how to handle errors, how to delete users, and how to do custom API actions. I just noticed that the order is not the same as in the title, but that's okay. I think this is the order of the examples we're going to do. So, I did a number of previous online meetups, and everyone covers a different topic. So this one is not going to build like a complete flow, right? We're going to specifically focus on these use cases, which I think are useful because you can sort of embed or use these in many automations that you build. So that's kind of the purpose of this meetup. All right. So let me just 1 second here. All right. Okay, so the first one was how to handle errors. So I'm in my workflows account dashboard, and let me find. So I got a lot of folders that you can see here, and so this is the one that we want. Okay, so the first case is how to handle errors, and this is one flow that's already working. So in case something doesn't work, I can always go, but I don't think we'll need to. So let's click new flow. Also, sorry, I think I forgot to say this event is being recorded, and then a message will go out tomorrow with a link to the recording and some of the resources also mentioned in this event. So Okay. So handling errors. So the cases, so as you run the flow, an error might occur, right? And you want to be able to handle the error. Now you might want to be able to stop the flow, right? Or in some cases you want to continue the flow. So you need to be able to, well, know how to sort of do both. So let's start with the, I'm going to use a sign card. And this is just kind of a first step in the flow. It doesn't really do anything. We'll just say hello. We'll just say hello. Now the next one, I'm going to use API connector here, and I'm going to use the get method. And so this card, that's what's going to help me create the error. And now the API that I'm going to invoke is going to be so this is a nice, neat service that you can use yourself. If you go to mock.codes, it shows you all the codes, all the HTTP codes that you can use, and then you just supply the code, and then that's the result that you get. So this is very useful for testing. So I entered this. Now this is 200. It means this is successful execution, and then we can. Sorry, the zoom bar is getting in the way. Let me click test. And we can see that we got the status code 200, so this just works. Now, if I do something like 500 here, this is an error. And we can see that I now get an error. Again, very useful for testing. All right. So let's say I've got this API invocation here. And then the next step, I'm going to do another assign. And I'm going to say hello again. Again, these assigns are not, they don't really do anything, but this is just to show the the steps in the execution. In other words, if an error occurs, will I reach the step or not? So let's actually see that. Oh, let's give this a name. So this is handling errors example. I want to enable this so we can see how the data passes from card to card. All right. So this is, again, this is just some logic before. This is the actual card that we're interested in, and then some logic after, right? Just to play an assignment. Let's test this. So actually, let me go back to 200 first. So I'm going to click test. Okay. And notice this is 200 is successful. Then this card is executed. Obviously, this one is because it comes before. This is the API, and then this card is processed as well. Okay. Now let's go back to and make this to return an error. And then notice what happens. We get the error, but now this card is not processed, right? So the flow stops. Okay, so we want to be able to, if an error occurs, still be able to continue the flow if that's what we need to do. So how do we do that? Well, so we're going to use a card called sort of try catch, or it's called if error. And then what we're going to do, we're going to move the API card inside this try section. Now, this actually card has two sections. It has try section, so try to do something, and then another section called if error. Now, we can just move this with a drag and drop. Okay. And then you can add any other cards or logic here. Now, in our case, we're going to do another assign card. And then say, hey, this worked, right? And then next, we're going to define output. So the way you do it is you can see there is a view outputs, and you just can expand it. And then we're going to give this a name. And so the way this works is that this first, if you can see, it says drag output here. So the successful result, or from the try section, we're going to take this. This is our result. That's just how our logic works. Of course, you can have other cards. We're going to drag and drop it like this. Okay, so we're going to get this message if this try section is successful. Now, if an error occurs, we're going to go here. We can see we get the error information. And then, as before, we can add other logic, right? It can be one card. It can be multiple cards. And we're going to do assign again. Say, let's say it failed. but we are okay, right? This is the message. And then we're going to take the output from here or from the if error section and then connect it. Okay. So depending on which branch is executed, we're either going to get the first message or this message. And then finally, we're going to take this output and just create another output for the assign card, sorry, input for the assign card. All right, and then let's save. And then let's go back here. So we have the, let's do 200 as to try, to test. All right. So we can see this is the original. Hello again. Hey, this worked. This is coming from the try section. So far it just works. Works fine. We don't have any errors. Now, let's see if we have an error. And all right, we just change this to 500. Click test. All right, and notice that we get this error. Notice that this card is not processed, right? So which makes sense because we got an error. But the flow continues execution. We see the original message, and then we see failed, but we're okay. Now, to see the execution, you just have to switch to if error, right? And this is where the flow switched to this branch, basically. And then we continue the flow execution, right? So that's how you handle errors. Now, you can, of course, put other cards in here. It doesn't need to be get, although, I'm sorry, it doesn't need to be an API call, although it's really one of the most common ones. You can do a search if you're searching for a user, whether it's an Okta or any other system. If you don't find the user, the card might return an error, so you can handle it this way. So yeah, that's the example that I wanted to show you. That's how you handle errors. And then, again, depending on what happens, you can now know how to continue the flow execution if that's what you need. All right. So that's for the first example. Now let's go to the second example. And this one is do delete users, and this one deleting users. So this is, again, I picked this example because I think this is a very sort of common case. And also, I think a lot of people were asking, how to do that. This actually came from one of the support questions, I believe, maybe even from the Mac admin Slack channel. So I figured, hey, let's see, let me show you how to do that. Okay, so there we're going to actually have two flows, one a helper flow and the parent flow. So the first step is we're going to create a flow that deletes the user. Now, I want to show you, I've got users here, and we're going to be deleting deactivated users. So that's one sort of requirement, is that the user needs to be deactivated. So these are my users. I've got 10 users, and then 3 of them are deactivated. So you can see Mason, Alicia, and Jacqueline. We're going to delete these 3 users, so they're deactivated. Okay, so let's call this delete user, and save this. Now, because this is a helper flow, we need to, the start has to be this helper flow card. And now we're going to be passing data from the parent flow. And so the data, so this input has predefined structure. So the first one is a record. And this has to be an object. And then we will also be passing in the ID. So this is the ID of the user that we want to delete. And then the second one is state. Now this is, it's a good idea to always define it, but it allows you to pass any additional data to the, any parameters to the helper flow. So the record is that we're going to be sending records. So we're going to iterate over the 3 users. That can be, in my case, it's 3. Probably in a more, in a real example, you can have a lot more users maybe. But this is the each record which we need to process. And in our case, we're deleting a user, but of course you can do other things as well. All right, so this is the input, sort of the format or the structure of the input that we need. And now for deleting, we're going to go to Okta connector, and then we're going to delete user. And then we're going to just pass the ID, right? So it's a pretty sort of, I guess, short or flow. That's all we're going to do. We're going to be deleting the user. So let's save this. And let's go back. And now we're going to create the flow that finds deactivate users. So get users example and make sure we see the data. And so in this case, we don't necessarily need to do anything here because we're going to be just testing if you're the test button. Here, we're going to go to Okta again. And we're going to, I think it's users. Let me see here. List users with search. So we're looking for users. Now, so what I'm going to do first, and this is just for testing. So if I go stream matching records, is what's going to happen is it's going to ask me for I can't really test this card. It's going to ask me for helper flow. So what you can do is just for testing if the search works, is you can go with this option, and then we're going to say deprovisioned, and then let me just move this bar again, and then we can test this without providing a helper flow. This is also the reason I first built the helper flow and then this one. But let's click test here. And I actually have 3 users. And these are the 3 users that I get back. So this is one of them, right? So this works. So now I know the search works. Now, if I need to switch to streaming, then I can do this. And I already have the helper flow available. Because without the helper flow, you won't be able to save if you don't set the helper flow. So we don't need to create, activate it. We don't need these inputs. Again, if you don't set this, you won't be able to save. So again, that's why I created the helper flow first. And let's find our folder. And not this one, delete users. And this is the one all right. And let's save. And this looks right. So we do need to turn on the flows. So we want to turn this one on. Go here. Let's turn this one on. And what I'm going to do is let's open this one. Right? And then going to flow history. Of course, there's nothing because we haven't run this one. I think everything looks good. So let's give this a try. So again, we got the 3 users, and then let's look at them again. This is the wrong tab, and this is the wrong tab. These are the 3 users. Now, just a quick thing. This is actually this is how I create the users. So I have another flow, and as I was testing this, I would delete the users, and then I don't want to, of course, manually create them. So I created another flow where you create the users, and then so I don't have to go each time and open the flow. I just I call it via this API. I click and it just runs and creates the 3 users. Just a little shortcut, in case you're wondering what this URL is here. All right, let's click test. And then let's go here. We can see that this is the helper flow. It was executed 3 times, right? Because we have 3 users, and it looks like it was successful. If I go back to my people, and then these 3 should be deleted. So let's refresh, and we can see now that the users are no longer there. Okay, so that's how you delete delete the user. So that was the second example. And then the third one, and I think we're doing good on time. The third one that I wanted to show you is custom API. So I can turn these slides off. All right, custom API. Okay, so let's give this a name, custom API example. And that's it. All right, so there are three sort of, I look at three levels of calling an API. So number one is that if there's a connector for the service you're using, and there's sort of a built-in call, that's the best option because it's sort of built in. And if you used workflows before, then I'm sure you've been using some cards like that where you call some API, for example, Okta. Well, let me give you an example. Let's go to Okta again. And let's say I want to search let's see, this user with search. So I think we did this one before. And then I only have 7 users now, so this will be fine. And then so the status in this case, I'm going to be active. So I have 2 active users. Just to show you, that's myself, and then I got Olivia. So if I test this, now, so what happens behind the scenes here is that they're actually in an API call going to Okta, right? And I get these 2, users here. So again, I guess this is the first level, or this is just how I look at it. Might be not the best way to describe it, but this is just one way to do it. Now, you also saw, if you remember the handle errors example, there was the sort of the third level, is that where you want to connect to a service that's not available as a connector. And then you just type in the service's URL, you set up the call itself, and then you can do it that way, right? So that's the third level. Now, there's kind of in between is that looking at Okta, it has a lot of different actions. Let's do this again. So Okta, as you can see, there's a long list of different things you can do, different sort of really API calls you can make, but there's some API calls which are not exposed here, right? And you might need to run them too. So what you would do, there is an option here, it's called custom API action, right? So this is kind of in between. Again, that's just how I call it. What's nice is that you don't need to set up any authentication, anything. It uses the same authentication, but it will ask you what's the actual API endpoint you want to call. So I use the list users with search here, and I'm going to do the same thing using this option. So you'll see these 2 cards are identical for the way they're used. I don't need the headers, and we don't need this. So notice that it's asking me for the relative URL, and in my case, this is API, and then users. And then the query, so I want to get only the active users. So for that, I'm going to use object construct, and I'm going to create a query. So it's search, and then right. So again, if you were using any other sort of way to tool to call the API, this would be a query, right? So that's after the question mark, it would say search equals status and this, and then I'm going to map it to the query. Okay. And so remember, we got 2 users here, and then we should be getting 2 users here as well. Let's now test this. And you can see I get 2 users here as well. There's a lot more information you get here, but this is me here, and then this should be Olivia, right? We can see Olivia. So I think this is a good example just to show you that these two are really, it's almost, well, it's the same thing, right? We're calling an API. This is, everything is out of the box. We need to worry about the endpoints, anything. This is, you do need to know the endpoint. You do need to know the query, for example, but you don't need to worry about the authentication. Right? It uses the same authentication that's here. All right. So now, so this is, again, this is the same thing. Now, let's look at an example where there's no card. We want to call an API for which there is no action in Okta. And so let's go here and Okta again. And custom API action. So now what I'm going to do is there is an API to list all the applications that you have. And I see we need the headers. We're going to need this. And then so the URL, the relative URL is API version 1. I'm sorry, not users, apps, right? And once we get the apps, well, we can test this. And you can see, actually I have 6 apps, and this is what I get. Now, if we want to see just the apps, we can use a function here called pluck, which is pretty neat. And then we want to get just the label. So there's, you saw there was a big JSON there, but we don't really care about everything. We just want to get the label of the app. So let's save, and let's run this. And right here, we can see we got 6 apps. So Okta Admin Console, and I've got a Salesforce. Again, just, it's pretty straightforward, just 6 apps, but this is the result. Okay. So this was the third example. So again, what this example shows is that, whether it's Okta or any other service, right? Of course, if there is an action available, like in this case, that's what you should be using. That's the best way to go about it. But there are some cases where that particular API is not exposed, and then you can use custom API action. Now, I've seen an example where the action, the API is available, but one of the parameters were either missing, or I think, no, it was required in this card, but it wasn't required in the API. And so in a case like that, you could, if the out-of-the-box card doesn't work for you, then you would use the custom API action to either, again, to provide the field or ignore the field. So you get some flexibility there. And of course, the third level, the third is to just, use the HTTP card that you saw in the handle errors example, where you can just enter the URL, set up the call completely, the headers, the body, everything, and then make a call. So you get different sort of levels of flexibility, or different levels of no code, maybe another way to look at it. All right. Oh, we're doing perfect on time. I think we have we'll have a few minutes for Q&A. So yeah, so we saw how to handle errors, we saw how to delete users, we saw how to do custom API actions, and resources. So I put together a page with all the resources, and so instead of listing them here, if you go to this link, you'll get all the resources that are available for workflows, from tutorials, documentation, videos, office hours, training, how-to guides. Again, I think everything you would need. So that's, you should be looking for resources and videos, of course, also. So you should go to this page. All right, so we're just a few minutes over, but I think we can, let me see if there are any questions. And let's see. All right, so there's one picture. I'm sorry, one question from Ivan. How can I add a picture before the name of the folder or folders? So yeah, this is just, I'm using an emoji. So if I go if I take this folder, for example, helper, and then, so this is just, you probably can't see that, but I have a shortcut on Mac to look at them, to show all the emojis, and then I can do something like this. So yeah, just the way you insert emojis, and that's how you do it. One thing you have to just keep in mind is that I think once you have an emoji at the beginning, it's actually going to drop it all the way to the bottom, and doesn't look like it's in alphabetical order, or unless it's just using the emoji in some way to sort the folders. So just keep that in mind. So, cool. Let me know if you have any other questions. You will have. Let me go here. You've got my email. So if you have questions, of course, you can also send me an email. I'm always happy to get emails with questions or anything else. If you have any other ideas for a topic for the next month online meetup, let me know. I'm thinking of doing just introduction to workflows, just covering the basics. I did one a few months ago, but maybe just a good idea to do it again, cover different flow. But if you have any ideas, examples, please let me know. There's one question: can I get a copy of the session? So absolutely, I'm going to once this is done, I'm going to upload it to the Okta YouTube channel. So there's a playlist for workflows, and then you can of course subscribe. I encourage you to do that, and you'll see when it's uploaded. But also in the email that goes out tomorrow, there's going to be a link to this recording. So. All right. Well, let me know if you have any other questions. We're doing good on time. We're 8 minutes over. But this is still fine. Let's see. I'll wait for a few more seconds. All right. I don't see any more questions. But again, my email is there, so just send me any questions you might have after this. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this was valuable. You enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.